Hey guys, Brendan Bradford here from Sporting News. I'm joined by Main Events Ben Damon. We're here to preview the Justis Huni versus Paul Gallen heavyweight showdown later this week. Ben, thanks for joining me, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very well, Brendan. Great to be here previewing another main event spectacle like this. Still coming to terms with what we saw last time from Paul Gallen, stopping Lucas Browne inside a round. Just a phenomenal achievement. And one thing going into this fight against the superbly pedigreed Justis Huni is we cannot underestimate what we're going to see from Paul Gallen.
It's been a fairly quick turnaround for Paul Gallen, about 8 weeks. Even quicker for Justis Huni. He fought only 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, Paul Gallen, he had the dollar signs ticking around in his head in the ring after that Lucas Browne fight. He already started angling towards Dean Lonergan and getting this fight made. It has been able to be made, but you mentioned Justis Huni. What an incredible preparation he's had. A fight just 3 weeks out from this fight, a fight that he and his dad think that he needed in order to prepare properly for the Olympic Games. And that's his big aim this year, is not this fight against Paul Gallen, not a potential rematch, but to win an Olympic gold medal. So this is all a stepping stone for him, but it's a very entertaining stepping stone and one that he seems to be really prepared for. He seems to be really coming into his own, Justis Huni. He's growing up as a person inside and outside the ring, so I think we're going to see another level from him here as well.
What did you make of that fight with Christian Tszyu a couple of weeks ago? It was, by the end of it, it looked like a glorified sparring session, but he was trying a few things out, going against the ropes and trying a few things. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was a funny one, wasn't it? Because early on in that fight, it did look like he was trying to make some sort of a statement, throwing really well to the body, as he always has as a professional boxer. But we did hear his father in the corner saying, just take it easy. I don't care what you do, essentially. We need these rounds. And it was a funny one to be there commentating, because you could hear all that. You could sort of see that there was no atmosphere either, and it did feel a little bit like a sparring session.
You mentioned the atmosphere or lack of atmosphere. It was a media-only event for Christian Tszyu and Justis Huni. Go back a couple of weeks to Paul Gallen versus Lucas Browne. Worlds apart. What did you make of that 90-odd seconds from Paul Gallen that night?
Yeah, it was a crazy night, that one. We obviously had a really good night leading into that fight. There was some really good fights, but then we got to that main event. It was just the blink of an eye. It was all over. But Paul Gallen came out looking ready for business. He charged across the ring and he managed to catch Lucas Browne with a couple of big shots. Paul Gallen made a statement, no doubt, in that fight. He stopped a former heavyweight champion of the world. So an incredible achievement for him. And now we know just how good Paul Gallen is, how tough he is and how difficult it can be to get him off you. And I think that is the key to this fight, because Paul Gallen is going to get across that ring. He's going to try and do to Justis Huni what he did against Lucas Browne. And we get to see just how good Justis Huni is with someone who's swarming him like that. Someone with man strength as well, which is probably something he hasn't really encountered.
Do you see Justis Huni wanting to trade on the inside, or is he going to keep his distance, stay out of trouble the whole night? Because there's options for Justis in this one.
Yeah, no, I don't think he wants to trade on the inside. He's said that he's willing to, but I think that's a last resort for him. His smartest fight is to use his feet, stay away, use his length, which is massive in comparison to what Paul Gallen has. He needs to box him, stay long, and when he uses that jab, as we saw against Christian Tszyu, it's beautiful, and he can just work off that, bring other shots in and go to the body like he was in that fight against Christian Tszyu, and do that at distance, which he was doing there as well. Those counter shots to the body were big. He threw some really nice shots, and I think we saw exactly what he's going to try and do in that Tszyu fight to what he's going to try and do against Paul Gallen. Whether Gallen is stronger and works harder and makes it more difficult, that remains to be seen, but yeah, I think we saw the blueprint from Huni.
There's been a bit of talk that Huni hasn't yet developed the ability to be able to sit down on his punches and really land a knockout blow as a heavyweight. Is that going to be an issue in this fight?
Well, maybe he doesn't want to at this stage, because he is an amateur boxer going to the Olympic Games, trying to win a gold medal as an amateur boxer. So it's a different style. He punches in a different way as an amateur, no doubt about that. There is a big question mark over his power, because he hasn't possessed that one big knockout shot against any of his opponents just yet. And that is the query around him from all the old school boxing fraternity. They want to say to you, yeah, he's very skillful, but he doesn't punch hard enough. Well, maybe we get to see after the Olympics that he does sit down in his punches and starts to throw with that power, and we hope that he does possess it, because that's going to be the difference between him being a middle-of-the-road heavyweight and maybe someone who's going to do some very big things for Australian and global boxing. In this fight, I don't know that he tries to throw with that ferocity. I think we probably see him box in the same style that we saw against Tszyu the other night, but later on, and you've got to remember he's only 22 at the moment, he's only had 4 professional fights and he's still an amateur boxer looking for a gold medal. Later on, maybe we see him evolve into that puncher that we would like to see.
It is a stacked card, absolutely jam-packed from the top going on down. Isaac Hardman is fighting Emmanuel in their co-main event. What do you make of this one? Interesting matchup.
Yeah, it's a really good fight. Always entertaining. Isaac Hardman, we saw him the other night on that show. He was an interesting character in the ring there because you could hear us in commentary and he was responding. Every time I'd call anything positive for Robert Berridge, he'd come back and say, no, he didn't hit me there. He's a great character, Isaac Hardman. Polarises people. A lot of people really don't like him. A lot of people do. Emmanuel is very, very skillful. I know he's been sparring with some of the boys in Sydney the last week or so. They say that he's been going very, very well and he is a good boxer. So it's a huge test and a lot on the line here as well because the winner most likely gets a world ranking and there's a number of regional and the Australian title on the line at middleweight as well. So a really, really good fight. It's as close to a 50-50 fight as you could hope for and it has to be as a co-main on a big main event show like this.
Ben Damon, thanks for joining me. How do we watch next Wednesday?
You watch via Main Event, you can order it through Foxtel or KO as well. Yeah, this is going to be a fantastic fight. We get to see this 22-year-old who's on the rise in Justis Huni. We get to find out just how good he is against a man who we continue to be so impressed by in Paul Gallen. It's going to be a really good night.